動でお風呂を沸かします。お風呂の線は来ましたか？自動でお風呂を沸かします。
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast, this week coming to you live from Perth. My name is Dan Schreiber. I'm sitting here with Anna Tashinsky, Andrew Hunter-Murray, and James Harkin. And once again, we have gathered around the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go.
What do they put in the water here?
Starting with fact number 1, and that is Andy.
My fact is that if you run a restaurant, one of the best ways to sabotage a rival is to get them a Michelin star.
Wow.
It's the kiss of death.
Is it?
It's the kiss of death for a restaurant. This is so cool. So this was a study. It was published in the Strategic Management Journal. Basically, the author tracked down restaurants that had been awarded a Michelin star recently and found that they are likelier to close over the following, however long it is, let's say year.
Do we know why?
Yes, we do. You become famous, for a start.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
Your customers change. People start coming from hundreds of miles away because you've got a Michelin star, you know. They get more demanding. You match their demands. You do fancier food. Costs rise. Chefs want their salaries to go up. They're likelier to leave because they've got the golden aura about them now. The whole thing is a disaster. And you're likely to end up shutting down. It's it's like a resource curse, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it happens.
And then once you've got 1 or 2, everyone chases the 3rd. And that's when it gets really dangerous because it gets incredibly expensive. So restaurant owners have started rejecting them, saying, we don't need this in our life. We don't need to be seen as good. We're fine.
Well, they're not allowed. Well, they officially weren't allowed to, were they? Until quite recently.
You can't reject a Michelin star?
Well, I think what Michelin said for a long time, because Marco Pierre White, I think, was the first person in the 90s to say, this is bullshit, can't take the pressure, take it back. And they were like, it's not yours, it's the restaurant's, mate. You can't give it back. But I think they did make an exception finally. There's a guy called Sébastien Bras who ran Le Souquet. And he just hated having a Michelin star so much that eventually Michelin said, it is difficult for us to have a restaurant in the guide which desperately does not wish to be in it. So they did agree to remove it for the first time. Wow. But it's the pressure, isn't it? And the fact that you don't know, and I didn't realise this, but you don't know why you've got it. You don't know it's coming. And when it appears in the guide, there's not like someone writes a review explaining, here are the elements of your dishes that we enjoyed. And as you say, you overturn your menu. So it could be that the reason you got it was for that amazing slice of white bread as you enter.
Yeah.
And once you ditch that from the menu straight away, you're nothing again.
That's the thing. You don't know that someone is in your restaurant judging you for the Michelin star. But not only that, people who work at Michelin don't know who those people are as well. Like the top level, they have no idea, right? Yeah, so you get hired, someone within the company obviously brings you in to do it, and you're out on the road for so many weeks per year. It's insane.
I used to work as a secret restaurant person.
Out. You're a Michelin star giver?
I'm allowed to talk about it now because it's been so long. But for quite a long time, you're not allowed to say anything because...
Are you serious?
Well, I'm half serious.
What?
Yeah, this isn't...
The start of it was serious, and then it went into whimsy quite quickly.
You used to work...
I did used to work as a person who went round restaurants sort of seeing how good they were.
For Michelin?
No, for Michelin, no. For just some company in Bolton in Lancashire.
Right.
The Michelin of Bolton. What were they called?
I can't say.
James, we'll have to wipe all of your memories on the way out now. So
well, can I just say, I like some of the amazing things that they have on the menus. So Mugaritz in San Sebastian in Spain has edible stones sitting atop an edible mould.
Wow.
Does that sound nice?
No, it doesn't. It sounds
okay,
horrible.
well, at Quince in San Francisco, they have a meal which is served on an iPad. Okay. It's a truffle meal, and then it comes on the iPad, and then there's some beautiful sort of stuff on the iPad that you can press and stuff like that.
Is it wet? Like, is it a wet meal on the iPad?
I suppose it's a little bit moist, but not wet enough. These days, you know, iPads and iPhones are quite waterproof, aren't they?
But do they put a cork up the...
Excuse me?
The
entry port?
The port.
Maybe they put it in plastic, I'm not quite sure.
Have you had that, James?
No, I haven't. I haven't had any of these. These are all places I want to go to. So Bros in Lecce in Italy, they serve a ricotta foam served in a plaster cast of the chef's mouth.
Wow. Okay.
Now, have you read the review of Bros, which is the greatest thing you'll ever read? And it is on a blog called everywhereist.com. And it does talk about Bros. It's 27 courses, lasts almost 5 hours, and basically you don't get any food, seemed to be the conclusion. So
because actually the chef's mouth is closed when it gives it you.
The mouth just eats the meal before you can get to it. So they serve things like frozen air that suddenly melted before they could eat it. Nothing is bigger than a tiny, tiny teaspoon. There was one moment in like course 19 where one of the women said she got excited because they put a little drop of sauce on the plate and then she thought, oh, they'll put a piece of meat on top. And then the waiter comes by with an eyedropper and squeezes a droplet on top of it and says, we've infused these droplets with meat molecules.
Is this a positive review?
It's unbelievably negative. So much so that the owner of the restaurant actually replied and gave, you know, on TripAdvisor, sometimes someone leaves a bad review and the restaurant owner replies underneath and you think, don't get involved, mate. Don't. What are you doing? And this guy replied with a drawing of a horse, underneath which he said, this is a drawing of a horse. It doesn't make me an artist. And it went on and on into more and more beautiful analogies. What is art? What is food? What is a chef? What looks beautiful?
I think someone who owns a restaurant shouldn't be asking, what is a chef?
No.
I think a lot of people agreed.
That was probably quite good for their business. Bad reviews can be quite good.
Yeah.
Because if you see a restaurant on Google or whatever and it's got 5 stars, you do suspect, don't you?
What do you suspect?
Well, you suspect...
What should I suspect?
Well, it's a lie. It's a fake. It's all the restaurant owners' friends. You know, it's just nonsense. Wherever, if
really?
you see a 4.2, you think that's my level.
Ah.
I don't deserve better, and nor do I want better than 4.2. In fact, Ash, Soundy, Ash, his favourite rating, he was telling me the other day, is 3.7.
Ash,
Okay.
that is out.
He
I would never
craves the
touch
3.7.
There's Michelin, by the way, had 3 star ratings that you could get right. So 1 meant it was worth a stop if it was 1-star Michelin. 2 was it was worth a detour. So if you saw that on the way, let's go out of our way. And then 3 is worth a journey in order to get to it. But they've changed that in recent years where you can get Michelin sort of labels to attach to yourself.
Okay.
One of which is for restaurants that are deemed not good enough. Not good enough for a Michelin star, but still worth eating at.
Just 3.6.
Yeah, 3.6, exactly. Yeah, they do other things now for sustainability, for how green the produce and all that stuff is. So there's multiple Michelin levels now.
That thing you're saying about them being worth a journey, worth a detour, blah, 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 that's all from the very early days, which I think we mentioned in the past, which is where it was all set up basically by Michelin, who make tyres to sell more tyres. What if we just send people around France on road trips for food? They'll wear out their tyres, they'll buy more tyres. Mm-hmm. The whole thing mushroomed out. It's a tyre selling enterprise that has got way out of hand, basically. But they contributed, I love this, to D-Day Michelin, because the Allied officers who landed on the beaches at Normandy in 1944 were all carrying the 1939 Michelin Guide to France in their pockets.
Really?
Because they had incredible maps of France. Like, there were no comprehensive guides. I think they had removed the restaurants. I think they might have slightly adjusted it.
Yeah, surely you tear the page out.
They held up in northern Normandy for a few days because there was a really brilliant moule restaurant that you've got to get everyone through. You have to try this, Barry. You have to.
Do you know, we've got behind us on the screen for the audience to see here, we've got a logo of the Michelin Man, a very famous character. Incredible how big and rich the history of the Michelin Man is. It was voted the greatest logo of all time by 22 designers as part of advertising logos. He was known as the Road Drunkard to begin with. And his name is a translation of drinking to be done. And originally...
Sorry, Michelin Man?
No,
Yeah,
so
so-
his name is Bibendum.
Exactly.
It was a Latin name. Yeah.
Sorry, in his French name, and Latin name, rather. And so he became massive, but the question that I never thought to ask is, tyres obviously are black, why is he white? And the answer is that tyres used to be white.
Yeah.
Which is, so he predates black tyres. Like, this is how old this logo is. Yeah.
And he's looking good for his age.
And he's called drinking stuff up because that's what these tyres can do. They drink up the road. That's the idea.
By drinking, I think it is a gerund bibendum. We are being precise. They still get their money off tyres because they make a huge loss on their guides. They don't make any money from them because they have to spend so much freaking money on 5-star meals. So I was listening to an interview with the head chef at Alinea in Chicago. I mean, foodies will be cringing at my pronunciation probably, but it's a very good restaurant in Chicago. And they said the amount that they spent sending Michelin judges to that restaurant alone was much more than the total profit from all the guide selling in Chicago. Amazing.
Amazing.
It's not a moneymaker.
I thought I'd look at some Australian fine dining.
Oh.
Really?
Seeing as we're here, yeah.
And then when you couldn't find any, you went for France.
There is a vegan restaurant in Canberra that was fined $16,000 because they had a cockroach infestation and they didn't want to kill them because they didn't want to kill any little insects.
Oh, really?
Apparently, they had a real problem with German cockroaches, and a single female German cockroach can give off 100,000 offspring in a month.
Whoa! There was a news story that came out, I think it was in July of this year or something, German cockroaches. So that's the cockroach that is everywhere in houses and in restaurants
In
and
Germany?
so on. Well, here's the amazing thing. For 250 years, it's been a mystery as to where they come from. And a scientist in Perth, as part of the university here, has discovered German cockroaches aren't actually from Germany.
No.
Huge discovery, huge finding.
Do we know are they from Austria? Because that's kind of Germany.
It's kind of Germany.
Wow.
No, it's the
Hello,
Bay.
Mr. 1938.
They did DNA testing on it, and it's from the Bay of Bengal in India.
Oh,
Yeah, so they
really?
traced it, and they
Wow.
mapped out this whole journey. It would have had to get on a boat and travel over, and they worked out all that stuff. But they don't appear in the wild. All the cockroaches that we have appear...
Well, they only appear in 5-star restaurants.
Yes, they're Michelin star roaches. Yeah. No, you will never find them in the wild. It's purely on
really
our
cool.
houses and restaurants and shops and so on.
Wow.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
The first Australian cookbook was written by Edward Abbott. It's very Australian, I have to say. This guy once assaulted the Prime Minister of Australia with an umbrella. The book has recipes for roast wombat and kangaroo brains. And at one stage, there's advice of what to do if you're having a conversation and a drunk person interrupts you.
What's the advice?
I didn't write it down. At one stage, it says, we advise ugly people not to go to parties.
Okay.
And that men who aren't that handsome may at least endeavour to not appear uglier than they can help.
Good advice.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hey everyone, this week's episode of Fish is sponsored by Skylight Frame.
Yes, Skylight Frame is a photo frame, but it's a lot more than that because it doesn't just contain one photo. You can upload dozens, hundreds of photos even. In fact, you can upload up to 8,000 photos onto this frame. You can upload a photo straight after you've taken it. It appears on the frame and they will appear sitting there on your windowsill for all to enjoy.
So here's the thing. Let's say you buy a Skylight Frame for your grandparents or your parents and it's sitting in their lounge room. You and other family members can have access to updating the photos that sit on their Skylight Frame. So if you're out in the park, you can take a photo, and boom, it's immediately in their lounge room. And not just that, there's also a doodle option whereby you can literally draw a little drawing and it will just be in their lounge room. You can even do greeting cards. So if, say, it's their birthday, they could wake up in the morning and on their Skylight Frame, they've got a happy birthday message with a little weird doodle that you've done and everyone is laughing.
Yes, make them all laugh. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Christmas is coming up and it is genuinely the ideal gift. So I absolutely love mine. It's the perfect way to share photos, for instance, with a grandparent, of their grandchildren, or just with friends, of you having fun with them or without them.
That's right. So get your own Skylight Frame now, and all you need to do for a limited time to get up to £40 off your purchase is go to Skylight Frame. That's SkylightFrame.com/fish. Use that /fish, and you can get up to £40 off your purchase.
That's right. And if you don't like it, they offer 120-day returns. So you can just send it back, but you won't. Okay, on with the show.
On with the podcast.
It is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that in America, you can buy designer snakes with emojis on them. Look at that. Isn't that cute? We have a picture behind us.
It's not cute. It's not. You can't even see its head. Something can't be cute if you can't see its head.
It actually looks more. It looks more jack-o'-lantern. It looks like a Halloween snake, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, in fairness, this is nature doing this. It's not a computer, so you have to take what you get.
Right.
Really, but this is a few people in America, in particular, someone called Justin Kabilka. And Justin Kabilka has been breeding these ball pythons for quite a long time. And one of the times the egg hatched and what should come out, but this snake patterned with these orange faces on its body. And he could sell it. And he makes lots of other snakes. You can get ones with 2 heads. You can get ones which feel like human skin when you touch them.
Horrible.
Yeah.
No, you don't fancy that, Perth?
They're
I think
amazing.
snakes they do feel quite nice.
Everyone thinks they're going to be slimy, but they're not
They're not
actually.
slimy at all. They're nice and smooth. But I think a snake, if you touched a snake and it felt like a human, it would be worse, weirdly.
Yeah.
Do we have a snake yet? Because they shed their skin all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have one that's like a pass the parcel, where it's a new design under each head?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I bet they're working on it.
That'd be cool.
So these are, like I say, they're ball pythons. And we think probably because they evolved below ground, they kept a lot of mutations which allowed them to change their colours because they wouldn't have so many predators under there. So normally if you're living on the surface, you either have lots of colours to scare people off, or more commonly you blend into the background. Because they're underground, they have all these extra genes.
What's amazing, so this is, I'd never heard of this before, James, before you telling us this, and there's a huge market for this, and these snakes go for such huge amounts of money, because they may give birth to snakes, and then you have further designer snakes, right? So it's like...
so it's like he's made them, right? Just to be clear. It's not like he's sitting there randomly hoping. Like, he literally chooses
That's
2
true.
snakes to breed. So he'll say, I have a design in mind. I'm seeing a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And then 2 years later, he'll have a snake with the Eiffel Tower on it because he makes them have sex with
Does
each
he
other.
do that? Does he?
Well, he
does
has
it,
one that looks like Stonehenge, and it mates with one that looks like Big Ben, and eventually it comes...
And how he does it is he'll put them in a room, get some Barry White on, just put a nice little spread out, and just watch them go.
Actually, one thing that happens is these snakes, whenever there's a thunderstorm, they all get really horny. And if he's not expecting a thunderstorm and suddenly he hears a bit of a rumble, he has to go, shit! And he has to run in and get all the snakes that he wants to have sex with each other and put them next to each other so that they'll have sex.
Wow, that's amazing. Also, he does... basically reveals what they're called is they're called morphs. When he's got a new design that he's invented and he drops. It's like he's a TikTok musician or Beyonce. He just drops the latest snake, and then you got to get in quick and buy it as quick as possible, right? So people monitor his site and his place for the next drop.
And you get a preview, don't you? And this is the sort of thing, you have this weird thing when you do our job where you start researching it, and because everyone in the field knows about it, you think, does the whole world know about this? So sorry if the whole world knows about this, but python breeders, anyone who owns a python, tends to cut their eggs open before they hatch.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. And so
I think everyone in this room knew that, Anna, yeah.
everyone knew that, right?
Wait.
So often in the wild, they don't survive. So quite a lot of the time, pythons' egg teeth, the tooth they have to crack themselves out of the egg, doesn't work properly, or they can't break themselves out, they suffocate, they're a bit weak. And so if you are a snake pet owner, then you'll open the egg to sort of help them out a bit. And for this guy, it really helps him out because he opens the egg, takes a picture, puts it on TikTok, and you can see this little snake inside the egg with the perfect pattern.
I think he
Really
live streams the cutting of the egg, so
Yeah,
you can
yeah, he
watch. So
does.
people tune in, like, what's it? It's like it's a Kinder egg, Like,
I feel
weird.
like, Andy, I don't think you approve of this practice.
I don't at all. No, it's just interesting, isn't it? People have such fun hobbies.
it is.
There's something disgusting about it, and I can't work out what.
He has, and it's like going to Jurassic Park. Like, he has this giant warehouse where there's over 2,000 pythons. He's constantly, as James says, like running around in matching pairs. Oh, there's a thunderstorm. He's running around getting all the horned dogs. He's like bringing them all together. He says his language, because each of these morphs get given their own name. And in the interview that James, I think, found this fact from, this guy, Kobilka, he says... that he was aiming for, and then all of that I'm about to say are types of different morphs that he's invented. An orange dream, yellow belly, Enchi, leopard, desert ghost, carrying clown genes. So a clown gene, just so to give you an idea, is a snake that's morphed where it has little tears.
It comes out of your pocket, but it keeps coming out of your pocket. Is that it?
That's it.
Or you open an egg and there's like 20 of them inside it. I should just say, because Dan alluded to it, yeah, this comes from an article in the New Yorker by someone called Rebecca Giggs, who wrote it. It's a great article, and I recommend you look it up.
Yeah. And sorry, just because you jumped in with a brilliant joke.
Oh, sorry. I won't do it again.
So the clown gene is he's morphed little tears under the eyes that you might get on a clown. So it's really specific stuff.
Or a murderer in prison.
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
That's Anna. You remember your time in the big house?
Those people weren't crying.
Yeah.
And they weren't clowns.
It's got that snake that's got thug life across its belly.
So pythons in general.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of the Florida Python Challenge?
No.
This is a great challenge you can do.
Is it like a cinnamon challenge?
You don't get to eat them, sadly, but
Oh.
you do. Basically, Florida is overrun with pythons. They arrived, and since 2000, the year 2000, 90% of furry animals have mysteriously gone missing in Florida.
Oh.
Because the pythons have gobbled them up.
It's not mysterious, is it?
It's not mysterious at all. All the biomass that used to be covered in fluff is now python, basically.
Wow.
That is the problem. And they're now eating each other. But so the Florida are trying to keep a lid on it.
They're eating the fluffy animals.
No.
Don't.
It's too soon.
Too soon,
It's
Dan,
too soon.
too soon. That is weirdly the most disturbing thing that's happened in this podcast so far.
But they set up basically this Python challenge, and the categories are novice, professional, and military, and the humans, that is. And you have to. There's a woman called Donna Khalil who I read a great profile of. She's 62 years old. She won this year for catching 19. She rides them. She kills them.
She rides them.
She rides them to kill them, to catch them and kill them. Because you have to sort of throw yourself on them, wrestle them, and they're massive.
Oh, because they're so big, sorry.
They're huge. One of them she caught was 18 feet long. It's amazing that she over her life has caught and dispatched nearly 900 pythons.
That is
It's mad.
mental.
And
It's
they have
crazy.
They are making a difference. I think there were 150,000 there, a 99% decrease in wildlife, and I think they've euthanized 11,000. They say euthanized, so it doesn't sound like that we're just sending people out into the wild to murder them.
There were 150,000 and now they've got 11,000.
No, they've still about 149,000. They've just caught 11,000.
Oh, terrific. Sounds like that problem has been solved.
I think so.
There was actually, very sadly, the story I'm about to tell, a dog dies in it, a chihuahua. But this happens in Australia as well. There was a story in 2014 where an Australian python managed to make its way into a kennel of a dog, a little chihuahua. And the owners found out that their chihuahua had been eaten, and it couldn't get out because the chihuahua had been chained inside of the kennel. So there was just a python sitting there with a chain coming out of its mouth. And it couldn't get rid of it. And it was just like, it was a bit awkward. And me? Where's the mother guy?
It jumped in there.
And they had to take it to a vet and remove the chain from the python. So it just caught in the act completely.
I can't believe you just felt the need to give us a trigger warning about a chihuahua dying. I know that is sad, but come on, we've got to grow up a bit, haven't we?
Okay. Thank you for telling me off in front of
Sorry to Chihuahua
1,500
fans.
people.
I've got one word, just trigger warning, people might die in this. This is...
It's going to make our podcast a lot longer.
A snake called the Quetzalcoatl, and if you drink a tincture made from its venom, according to the Aztecs, you will continually have an erect virile member and constantly eject your semen and die of lasciviousness. Basically, you'll spaff yourself to death.
Really?
No.
According to Aztecs.
Oh.
Continually.
Continually, yeah.
So you end up just a husk.
Ironically, like a snake that shed its skin, you'll just be like a...
That is ironic.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you've had a damn good time, haven't you?
all the husks have their thumbs up.
Their thumbs up what?
I have a very niche fact here that no one except me and my children are going to like. But
Can't wait.
There's a very famous WWF wrestler called Jake the Snake Roberts. Any Jake the Snake Roberts fans in?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Wow, all your kids are in tonight.
And so Jake the Snake Roberts, he used to come to the ring with a live snake in a bag, and his move was at the end of the match, he would reveal the python or viper onto the stage, and it was real. It bit into wrestlers, and it really harmed a lot of them. It was quite a dangerous gimmick. Wrestlers, they traveled for basically the entire year to a new city for every single wrestling recording. And this was something he had to lug around America everywhere he was going. And he revealed not too long ago that actually he is terrified of snakes. His entire career, he's been petrified. He wakes up in his hotel room at night going, fuck, where has it escaped? And so the thought was, because wrestling often, the wrestlers get given the gimmicks, and they have to make a career out of it.
Didn't know that.
Turns out he created his own gimmick. And they said, why would you do that? And he said, I was stoned. And I pitched it, and they went, yes, and it stuck. So his whole career has been in fear. Yeah.
Wow. Anyone would think these people aren't the smartest tools in the shed. Smartest tools in the shed? Sure.
I don't know if Australia is home to any native species of snake, but...
Don't think so.
No.
Exciting news from the UK. We've just got a new one. The new one is called the Aesculapian, and it should be too cold for it to live in the UK because it's a bit cold there. But it finds warmth in human-built attics and wall cavities.
Oh,
It sounds like
it's
a
house
nightmare.
snake.
It's a house snake. Oh, God, yeah. And they mostly live in Wales, in a place called... they live in walls in Wales, mostly. But there was a scientist from the University of Bournemouth called Tom Major, weirdly, who said, you do get the odd person who is not a fan of them being here, but generally they are well received. I call bullshit. He said, if you find one in your attic, personally, I would just let it be, as you wouldn't really know it was there.
Fair enough.
Just move out.
And they're very shy.
What was weird about him being called Tom Major?
Well, it sounds like Major Tom.
Oh, I thought you were saying it sounds like former Prime Minister John Major.
That too.
Yeah.
If the snake was found in space with an astronaut called Tom Major, that would have been...
Do you know what snakes do in space? I found out.
No, go on.
Oh, my God. Slam dunk.
They don't live there.
They don't live there. There are no snakes in space, native to space. But if you put a snake in space...
Yeah?
They will either... They get a bit confused, as you would, but they either attack their own tail, thinking it's a rival, or they hug themselves thinking they found a friend.
How far do you think a snake swallows itself before it realizes it's itself? And how embarrassing is it when they have to reverse out?
I saw the Michelin star. I just thought this was a good place to eat.
So let's go on to fact number 3, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that the largest Catholic diocese is Orlando because it includes the moon. But you didn't know that? This is based on the Catholic Code of Canon Law 1917, which I know everyone's memorized, which says any newly discovered territory is placed under the jurisdiction of the diocese from which the expedition which discovered that territory left. And of course, in 1969, Apollo 11 went from Cape Canaveral, which is in Orlando,
to the movie theatre where it was faked.
So, according to some people, landed on the moon. And the Bishop of Orlando at the time was a guy called Reverend William Borders, who did seem quite endearingly keen to emphasise that he was now Bishop of the Moon.
He kept banging on about it, didn't he?
He did, he was into it,
He met
yeah.
the Pope in 1916. There was a bit of a joke in 1968, Bishop. He was the founding bishop of that diocese in 1968. That was the sort of when it was properly instituted.
Right.
And there was a bit of joshing when Apollo 11 launched, like, who owns that then? Oh, and he was like, it's me. Oh, it was very, very funny. And then
I don't think you're delivering it as good as...
At some point, he met the Pope. He met the Pope next year, and then he suddenly became deadly serious. Said, "Well, of course, the moon is mine, Your Holiness." And he said, "It's canon law." And I mean, it's, It's dubious. Apparently, the current Bishop of Orlando is a guy called Bishop John Noonan, who does not consider himself the Bishop of the Moon.
Well,
so
that's what his press secretary says, and I want to know if she's run it by him when she says, I'm sure he doesn't consider himself. I bet he read that news story and went, fuck off, mate.
Yeah.
Why do you think I took the job?
When they had that first discussion, there was this guy Borders who said that he was the bishop. There was Cardinal Cook, who was the military ordinariate at the Air Force Base. So he was like the priest at the Air Force Base, and he said that he should. And then there was the Archbishop of Miami, who was Coleman Carroll, and he said that he should be the Bishop of the Moon because the moon is always over Miami.
Yes.
what the fuck is he talking about? No, it's not.
This
Sorry,
is
this like a
just
fun...
priest banter.
Oh, sorry. But what a
But I don't get
shit,
it.
I don't get it. It's not always over
he said-
Miami.
No, but it's probably a phrase, Andy. I think you're taking
It's
it
not
too
a phrase.
seriously.
No, I'm with Andy because
No,
I
no,
googled
no,
this.
no.
I was like, this must be an in-joke, a Miami thing. The moon's always over Miami.
No, what he's saying
What?
is, oh yeah, when we look up at night, the moon's always there. So
Has he
we
ever
must-
spoken to anyone who doesn't live in Miami?
That's the
I
joke.
see. No, I see.
Right.
That is a good
It's
joke. That's a
priest
good joke.
banter, Andy.
I don't think I was cut out for the priesthood. I just don't, I wouldn't have fit in.
What's the actual largest Catholic diocese on earth, would you say?
Can you define diocese quickly?
Okay, yeah, it's the area that's looked after by a bishop.
Okay.
So, for instance, there will be a diocese around Perth, perhaps, and it might involve quite a lot of Western Australia because
you're
they don't need them all over all the little villages.
Somewhere non very broadly inhabited. So Mongolia would be a good...
Yeah, that's a good guess. It's quite close, actually. It is in Irkutsk, in Russia. And, interestingly, if Irkutsk, this Catholic area, decided to secede from Russia, so it's not part of Russia anymore.
Good luck, guys. I think they take quite a dim view of that.
Well, they're busy on the other front, so then...
Okay.
If the people of Irkutsk, the Catholics of Irkutsk, which admittedly is only 0.4% of the area, but if they decide to secede, Russia won't be the biggest country anymore. Do you know what will be the biggest country?
The current second biggest.
China.
Canada.
No, not Canada. It would be the newly seceded area of Irkutsk.
No.
Because it's more than half of Russia. Is
No.
that diocese?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, they got to do it.
It would be so funny.
That would be
Now you're liking the
really good.
bishop jokes.
Yeah, maybe I would have been good. You know the whole thing about moon ownership?
Okay.
Well, yep.
So it's like sometimes you can buy a plot of the moon.
Yeah.
can't
So
you?
all of those things are fake, basically. Because
Oh.
there've been there's a load of jostling at the moment because everyone's kind of agreed that no one actually owns interplanetary bodies. But at the moment, the USA, for example, are trying to set up a thing called coordinated lunar time as a kind of proto-colonization. Like if you control the time, it's sort of an acknowledgement that it's kind of yours. So,
Okay.
Oh.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, really, no one owns it. And all those things where you buy an acre of the moon are all made-uppy. So Robert Coles was a guy in 1955 who sold off huge chunks of the moon. The Interplanetary Development Corporation sold it off for $1 an acre, pretty cheap, if real, which it wasn't. But it was quite good, this, though, because you got the mineral rights to anything under your acre of moon. You also got beach and fishing rights in the Sea of Tranquility. See what you did there?
Right.
And you got the right to participate in all winter sports on the Lunar Alps.
Cool.
Okay.
Very cool.
I think that's fun.
Apollo 11 is when this bishop was claiming ownership of
Yeah.
the moon, right? A lot of the Apollo astronauts were surprisingly religious. James Irwin, who was Apollo 15, he was a literal creationist. He went up to the moon to prove that God created the earth in 7 days. And there was a moment when he was up there when a thing happened where a decision needed to be made. And he thought, I could message NASA and say, how do I fix this thing? Or I could just ask God. And so he asked God, and God said, oh, it's the blue wire, or whatever. And he did what God said.
What?
And it worked, yeah. So this was on the moon, an isolated man
So
with one
God
other
basically
human.
told him the thing that he got told in his training.
That's one way of looking at it,
But to
absolutely.
be fair, the reception to God is much better when you're on the moon, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
You're way closer.
There's no conflicting
Yeah.
signals.
Exactly. But so when he came back to Earth, he set up a religious group, and his first expedition post going to the moon was going to Mount Ararat to look for Noah's Ark.
Did he find it? Or
He thinks that he did find a few bits of
Because
wood
you'd think
that
it would
kind
be
of-
obvious when you did find Noah's Ark.
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
you?
You'd think so, but it's broken up now. It's
No,
not just.
fair,
It's not a
fair.
giant ark. I think we would have spotted it.
Yeah, with all the
But-
animals, or like a pair of animals looking out of each window.
They'd be dead now. It was. But check this out. There's this one fascinating story when he was up Mount Ararat looking for it. So he was climbing and he got really tired. So he decided, okay, today abandon the trek, head back to where our base is, and let's recuperate and go tomorrow. So while he was walking down on his own, he took a pause and he kneeled down to put on some crampons onto his boots. And he was struck suddenly from behind by a giant falling rock. And it just knocked him down the hill. He knocked out 5 teeth. He had deep cuts to his eyes and his nose. He sprained his neck and he messed up his ribs. So he just camped there for the night. Unfortunately, once he had got his sleeping bag out of his bag and got into it, he zipped himself up. And once he was asleep, he slid down the mountain like a sled and hurt himself all over again when he bashed into multiple boulders. So he woke up lower down and it was on a slide.
and
So,
God is like, this was for bothering me while you were on the moon.
so he climbed back up in his sleeping bag, and just before he got to the top,
like a worm.
like he went back up and then he slid back down again and crashed. Yeah.
What, for fun? Sorry,
No.
because he was like, that was a nice
No,
green run.
every time he went and got near to the bit that was flat, he slid back down. It happened 3 or 4 times, smashed his face
You've got to
so
climb
many
out
times.
of the sleeping bag, mate. How dumb is this guy?
He eventually passed out and he woke up and he was connected to his pillow because there was so much blood that had solidified on it. Yeah, he should have died on Mount Ararat. It's the most like Mr. Bean adventure amongst this search. But he was a creationist on the moon.
Any idiot can be an astronaut. That's what we've learned here.
Aye.
Give it a go. I do think it's interesting because he must have had a conception of where heaven is and where God lives. And like, where do you think heaven is?
Up,
It's up. It's somewhere vague, right?
opposite of hell.
It's in a parallel universe, it's opposite of hell. So I think we often think of it as somewhere a bit different dimension-y. But until people like Galileo, Christians thought there were 3 heavens. The first heaven was bird heaven. That's where the birds live.
Oh.
That's where they're flying around. The second heaven is star heaven.
Sorry, but does that mean that all the birds are already in heaven?
They've
the ones
been
that are
very,
flying around?
very good.
Exciting new theory.
Wow.
Yes.
So bird heaven, and then above that, did you say
Star
star?
heaven.
Star
Okay, so
heaven.
it's birds.
And
stars,
above that
check.
is Empyrean heaven, and that's where God lives, and that's where you'll go. And if you asked a medieval person, where will you go when you die? They were very clear. They look up where the birds are. They're like, and then above that, if I kept going up in a ladder, there's stars. And if I kept going up, there's where I'll die. And it's such a weird way of conceiving of it, right? So when Galileo and co saw planets and worked out that different things went around different things, that really fucked it up more than we can imagine.
So just for clarity, were the birds higher than birds actually flew?
No, they just thought heaven was low. They didn't think birds were high. They thought
But
heaven
you
was
can't,
low.
if you climbed a tree, you didn't get into bird heaven. You couldn't just say like,
What I
I'm
mean-
just gonna cut my
about-
losses. I'm gonna stay in bird heaven. I know
about,
I'm in bird heaven.
Anna, what about emus? Have they just been really bad?
Yeah. Well, the devil's bird, famously. Oh yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, where is the living birds? Are they flying next to the ghost dead birds?
Oh
Sorry,
yeah.
no. All the dead things are in the top heaven. Just where the birds are, we're like, well, that's the first layer of heaven.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
beyond
So
where
it's
It's not
just like-
third heaven as in it's where birds go
No.
after they die. It's named after the people who live there.
I got confused. I got confused about
But
that.
that was like, people did hold on to that theory for quite a long time. And when the hot air ballooning was invented, there was a group called the Muggletonians, and they wanted it to be banned because they thought people who hot air ballooned would bump into heaven.
It's cheating.
They refused to accept the laws of gravity. But your mate should have done that. And they believed that God takes no notice of everyday events on Earth and will never intervene in anything.
I mean,
and so,
checks out so far.
yeah. But that meant that there was no point doing any kind of worship because God clearly isn't listening. So let's just not go to church.
Let's just balloon,
Well, no, you're not allowed to do that.
because that's cheating.
That's
Well,
trespass.
yeah, exactly.
You might be in heaven, and everyone you met in heaven, you'd have to say, are you a good guy or just a balloonist?
Because you weren't because God wasn't listening and you weren't worshipping, you would have meetings instead, and you just go to the pub and chat. Sounds
Okay.
nice, doesn't it?
Describing the modern day. Modern secular society. Yeah.
We were talking about a very big Catholic space, the big dioceses.
Yeah.
I thought I'd try and find a very small Catholic space.
Great thinking.
Thank you. So I don't think we've ever talked about priest holes. So 16th century, a lot of persecution on both sides. To be fair, a bad time to be anybody, the 16th century. Anyway, but when Catholicism was illegal in England, if you were caught with a priest, they would be taken away and tortured and executed, and you might be as well. So lots of houses had these priest holes where you just hide your own priest. And there's a place in England called Hindlip Hall, which has 12 separate priest holes. Some priest holes had their own priest holes.
Were you hiding a priest from the other priest?
You were...
I swear you're our only priest.
It was basically a bluff. If they come in and they find your priest hole, they're
that's
like, you've got a
clever.
priest hole. And you'd be like, yeah, but there's no priest in it. Then they leave and you open up the second hole and you're like, you're right, mate.
You wouldn't put the shitter priest in the
You might
second hole.
put the shitter priest in the outer hole
Yeah.
and think, well, if we lose one priest, that's fine.
You
It's
got
a shame,
it.
but
That's it for this household. Bye.
bye. Guy who built these holes, he was a Jesuit brother called Nicholas Owen. He spent 20 years creating the chambers around in various houses, hidden walls, hidden compartments, everything. He was caught and tortured for it. He is now the patron saint of illusionists.
That's correct.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hi, everybody. This week we are sponsored by Saily.
Yes, Saily. Thank goodness for Saily. It saved me so much when we were overseas recently in Australia and New Zealand. It is an eSIM that allows you to continue to use your mobile phone while you are overseas and make sure that you are not spending an absolute fortune in overseas costs.
Yes, it's really clever. So the way it works is you download an app, you buy a plan so you can tailor it to your needs. If you're going to lots of different countries, for instance, you can buy a plan that works in lots of different countries. There are multiple plans in over 160 countries. And then it will take you through instructions to install this eSIM and you're good to go. You got constant internet access wherever you are.
That's right, you're on local networks. It's not costing you a bomb. Unlike Anna, who just decided to use her British SIM card while overseas, we are going to learn the fruits of my genius.
Such an idiot. I'm so screwed when that bill comes through.
So don't be Anna Toshinsky, be Saily. Be clever.
Only in this one respect. Yes. Yes, and you can get an exclusive 15% discount on Saily eSIM data plans if you download the Saily app and use the code FISH at checkout.
Okay, on with the podcast.
On with the podcast.
It's time to move on to our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that the Oscar-winning movie, The Summer of 42, is the only movie to be based on a novel that was written after the movie was made. What?
Explain.
Time travelers, everybody. That's what I'm talking about. No, so this was a big movie in its day. It was called Summer of 42, and there was a writer called Herman Roscher who wrote the movie. The movie went into production. It was being made. And then, as often happens, novelizations of the movie are written. So Herman Roscher wrote his own novelization of the screenplay. They released it prior to the movie coming out, but it became such a massive hit as a book that everyone started going, oh my God, they're making a movie of this book? Even though the book was of the movie. And then the people within Hollywood went, well, let's roll with that. So the movie was billed as based on the book, Summer of 42 by Herman Roscher. And so it was very confusing because it got nominated for a bunch of Oscars. It won an Oscar. It was not nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. It was just outright screenplay because they knew inside. But yeah, so it's one example where the popularity of the second product was so big that it eclipsed.
The only example. Let's not pretend we get all conjured.
No, yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Was it 1942? When was it?
No, the
Around that
Summer
time.
42. This was a 1970s movie, in the 70s.
I feel like,
Got it.
just to interrupt, I feel like Andy might have another example.
Do you?
Well,
Step in.
I've got it's a kind of example of things getting incredibly tangled with the novel to movie thing. So Bram Stoker's Dracula was turned into a novel after the film came out.
What?
Was it?
Yeah. with 8 pages of colour photos. As in,
Oh,
they said,
okay.
let's do it.
Right.
Let's do a
Did it.
book of the film of the book.
Got it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
Great
okay.
Expectations, that was novelised. Again, like, it's a novel. You don't
Yeah.
need... I don't know. I find it weird. Jumanji, I love this. Jumanji was based on a book, right, by Chris Van Allsburg. That was turned into a screen story, which was turned into a screenplay, which was turned into a film, which was then novelised into a novel. So it started as a book. It went through the entire sausage machine and ended up being a different book.
I want to ask you to repeat that, but I'll re-listen when the edit comes out. 'Cause I didn't follow it.
That's the mark of confidence. I don't want to listen now, but yeah.
There was one, so Robert Sheckley, a writer, wrote a book called The 10th Victim in 1965, and that was a novelization. And I think novelizations were slightly more respected then, because they were newer, basically, so people didn't know that they were all going to be shit. So it was a novelization of an Italian film by the same name called The 10th Victim, but the film was based on another book by Sheckley called The 7th Victim.
Okay.
And I don't know more about that, actually. So.
There is a movie that was based on the poster. As in, the poster came first, and then the movie came
Can we
after.
guess it?
This poster has done so well.
Yes, I think you can guess
Oh my
it,
God.
actually.
The Scream.
Oh my God, Dan! I said, oh my God, first, which is the equivalent of buzzing in.
Sorry.
And I believe the first person to say, oh my God, was Anna Toshinsky.
Is it Scream?
No.
For fuck's sake, Darren, what a stupid suggestion.
Can anyone, I reckon the audience might get it. It's a very iconic poster.
A work of art.
Star Wars, no. Snakes on a Train, no.
Shrek 3, though.
Shrek's based on a book, actually.
Is it?
Yeah. It's...
Jaws?
No, the answer is The Usual Suspects.
Ah.
And apparently a reporter at the Sundance Film Festival asked the guy Macquarie who was making it, he said, what's your next movie? And he had this idea of these people lined up, and he said, oh, I guess it's about a bunch of criminals who met at a police lineup or something. And then because he had the idea of the image first, and then he thought, well, how are we going to turn this into a movie?
Yeah, right.
That's cool, isn't it?
Cool.
I've never heard of this example I'm going to mention. So when we just said to the audience, someone said Star Wars out there, right? Okay, so when A New Hope came out, there was so much money that was behind that first movie, and they were hoping that George Lucas was going to write the second movie, which became Empire Strikes Back, right? So the novelization of A New Hope was written in 1976 by a guy called Alan Dean Foster, and he was contracted to do 2 books in case the first movie bombed and they couldn't produce George Lucas's next movie. So Alan Dean Foster, the novelization guy, write a sequel using all the props that we used in the first movie so that we can make your novelization instead of George Lucas's idea for Empire Strikes Back.
Wait, I don't
Yeah.
understand. What, in case George Lucas's didn't work?
Because they could save the money because they already have the props.
Exactly. So if it didn't work, if that first movie didn't work, we were going to get a second movie called Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And it was published before Empire Strikes Back came out. And it has a completely different plot. It's based on a jungle planet. Han Solo and Chewbacca are not in it because Harrison Ford hadn't signed up for the second movie yet. So they didn't want to include him. But no one had told Alan Dean Foster at this point that Leia and Luke were brother and sister.
Spoilers, Dan, sorry.
Sorry. So the whole book is sexual tension between brother and sister.
Uh-oh.
I've got some extracts. Luke felt the warmth of the body next to him. Framed in the light from above, the princess looked more radiant than ever. Leia, he began, and then pulls out. But not pulls out in that respect.
Oh, for shame.
Yeah.
Come on.
The princess grew aware of how tightly she was clinging to him. The proximity engendered a wash of a confused emotion. It would be proper to disengage, to move away a little, proper, but not nearly so satisfying. And then Empire Strikes Back came out, and Alan Dean Foster was like, what the fuck, George? I've written an incest novel.
He is amazing, Alan Dean Foster. But with Star Wars, they refused to show him what anything looked like. They refused to even tell him what anything was really. So he had to write the character Jabba the Hutt without knowing whether he was a human or a massive slug. And so he just fudges it in the text. And this happened with, like, he did the novel of the film Alien, and again, they refused to send him any pictures of the alien because they were keeping it under wraps. So he just had to kind of guess.
But Jabba the Hutt is just a combination of a human and a massive slug, right?
Oh, Anna. No, he's a massive slug.
Oh, right, but with a human face.
He doesn't have a cute face.
Well, he doesn't have a slug's face, I'll say that.
Maybe I know some weird-looking people. Oh, okay, sorry. It's just he's just a slug. Got it. Didn't know that.
Well, he's not a slug. Oh, he's a sort of space. Anyway,
He's like a space slug.
But he has done absolutely everything, Alan Dean Foster. He's done Star Trek, he's done Transformers, Terminator. His first job was for an Italian Lady Tarzan movie, right? Which was in Italian, no subtitles available. So he had to completely, guess what was happening throughout the film.
I mean, what's Italian for?
Mamma mia!
But he did exactly what your guy did, James. He based it on some production paintings.
Oh, yeah.
Turned that into the novel. And when the book came out, someone from Disney said, "We love this book. Can we turn it into a film?" And he said, "No, it's a film already. It's an Italian Lady Tarzan film."
Right.
I didn't know that Star Wars left the EU.
What?
Sorry.
This is like being within the bubble, so every single listener to this podcast will know this, except me until yesterday. But the EU, of course, is the expanded universe, which I didn't know that was...
What are you talking about?
You know, the expanded universe of any film is the...
It's when you
the
do a video
spin-off.
game or you do a novel, it's the expanded,
Okay.
non-canon movie,
Right.
but it's still canon.
So, like the spin-off novels and all that other shit. And the phrase expanded universe was invented for Star Wars. And it left the EU in 2012. And I just think it's very interesting that Star Wars is now divided into sort of two different quantum realities. Because,
So what do you mean it left the EU?
well, I mean that George Lucas made 3 more films.
Yes, and
I
they are
believe.
mostly about trade negotiations,
Yeah.
actually. So it's kind of perfect that this is the EU.
Help me, Boris Johnson. You're my only hope.
I'm a giant slug. What are you talking about?
With a human face. This is what I'm talking about. And it was incredibly controversial amongst Star Wars fans because people had been told when the first 3 Star Wars films came out that the only subsequent films would be prequels, which they were, right? The next 3 were prequels.
Yep.
So everyone who was writing in the expanded universe, novels and comic books and stuff like that, were writing sequels, stuff that happens after the first 3 films. Then, of course, Disney took over 2012 and released the next 3, which, correct me if I'm wrong, are sequels, right? They happen, the events happen after. So that completely fucked with the Star Wars universe. And so they split into 2 universes now. They've left the EU.
In 2011, the distributor of the film Drive, you know the film Drive?
Oh,
Was
yeah.
that Ryan Gosling?
Ryan Gosling.
Right.
Was sued by a woman from Michigan called Sarah Deming for saying it didn't contain enough driving. She's sued saying it bore very little similarity to a chase or race action film, having very little driving in the motion picture.
Isn't he in the car the whole time?
He's in the car a lot of the time,
Right.
but it's more in the first half. The second half is a bit more depressing and a bit less driving based. I sort of appreciate.
How much did she sue for?
Oh, probably some standard American amount, like $5 zillion. Anyway, I don't think she won.
Was it successful?
But you can sue based on trailers, can't you?
Can
'Cause
you?
There was that film Yesterday, which was a Richard Curtis film about what if the Beatles never existed,
Yeah,
but only
yeah.
one guy remembered them.
Yeah.
That was sued by a couple of fans because the trailer had featured Ana de Armas, who's a very famous actress, and then she wasn't in the final film. And they had paid $3.99 each to watch this film on Amazon Prime. So naturally, they sued for $5 million.
Wow. I think she is in the final film.
Well, I think she's
in on the chat show bit.
She's drastically cut because she was
Yeah.
a much bigger part of it. Because she was basically cut from the final film, it's like she never existed, and these 2 losers are the only people who remember her, which is the plot of
Which
the
is the
film.
plot! Oh my God! Yes. That is it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. Perth, you were awesome. We will be back again. And until then, tune in next week for another episode. We'll see you then. Goodbye!